Hey, hey, hey! It's Wednesday at 5 o'clock, and you know what that means. Happy hour with Dr. Lisa. I am Dr. Lisa, and I'm your host. I am so happy to talk about some of my stories in psychology today. I've been thinking about it all day. So, I am going to start by answering some of your questions that you have been sending to me. But before we do that, I'd like you to know that you can also join me live on Podbean, Instagram, or Facebook. If you want to join live on Instagram, my account is at Kids Can See Ghosts. Can you? Facebook is under my name. You can also call me at 765 205 1959. And you can email me, kidscanseeghosts@gmail.com. Okay, so before we get into talking about the next blog, which is, well, we're going to finish up blog 22, questions for me. I get a lot of questions, and you guys are also curious about, some things that are personal to me. So I'm going to answer those today. But then we're going to go straight into blog 23. I should have talked about blog 23 during Halloween, but we're going to talk about blog 23, or at least start it. And it's pertaining to emotions. Speaking of emotions, I have to share with you all that I'm in a somber mood. Why am I in a somber mood? Well, I'm going to tell you because I like to tell you all of my live experiences in psychology as well. So this one's actually a pretty sad one. So, get prepared. I had to be guarded the way I tell this story. Because remember, everything is confidential. So after kids are tested, a lot of you know what that means when you do psych testing or educational testing. One of the things you have to do is you have to go back and you have to tell the parents all of the results. So imagine being very excited to tell parents the results of your testing, and the results are showing that the child is improving. And I get really excited. If you ever come across some of the parents that I work with, they'll go, yeah, when things are positive, she's very happy, to let us know. When things are not as positive, she's happy to let us know that too, just differently. Well, I was really excited about this one and found out that my parents weren't showing up because they were killed. Yep, this past weekend. So that psychology, my stories are funny. Sometimes they're scary, but when you actually deal with people, you really do get attached to them. And also, everything is not rosy. There's some stories that really get to you. And so I've had students, two that I can think of right now, who unfortunately succeeded with suicide, but this was both parents were murdered, which was something that I hadn't experienced in all these years. So it was pretty shocking. And what you have to do is you have to go forward with the meeting to close the paperwork out legally on behalf of the child. And then, of course, if there's another guardian or parent who's going to take over, that stuff will follow a student to their next school. So that is something that actually happened this week, and we were devastated. So shout out to the individuals that I work with because they handled it like a boss. Whereas I'm human and I'm not perfect, I needed to walk out of the room. So, one of the things that I talk to my students about is that you always have to be human, and it is okay to tell your clients or to tell people or to tell your colleagues that things are bothering you. And that bothered the hell out of me for obvious reasons. And it took me about 2 days to kind of settle, those emotions. So that is what happened this week. So pretty sad turn of events. Um, not one that you, not one that I ever thought I would ever deal with the parents, you know? So that was a different experience. But we're going to move on. I think we finished the first 15 questions. There are so many, I can't get to all of them, and I really appreciate it. But let's do I did some fun facts on here. So let's talk about a couple of fun facts about me. There are some really personal questions, but I don't really answer deeply personal questions like my kids' names and stuff like that. So keep that in mind when you ask questions. But I will answer questions pertaining to these stories. And someone asked me something that I consider a fun fact. I should have answered this question over Halloween, but I didn't. Someone asked me if I prefer to spend the night in a haunted house or a cemetery. Really, I'm going to say neither, because you wouldn't catch me spending the night in anybody's haunted house or anybody's cemetery. My mom will always say, "Oh, dead people can't hurt you," but really, would you spend the night at a cemetery? No, you wouldn't. I wouldn't either. But if I had to choose, because I'm a good sport, I'm gonna have to tell you the haunted house, because there's one that I really wanted to visit in St. Louis that I did not get the opportunity to visit. Well, will I spend the night in it? Probably not. So that was a funny question. Um, because I talked a lot about the 4 buildings um, at a former place of employment, I do get a question like this or similar to it at least once a week. So I'm going to answer it. I did it on this blog and I'm going to answer it again. Okay. People have asked me, would I stand there and watch the removal of a demonic spirit from someone? I don't know why people ask me that kind of question, but some of you want to know. And so what you're talking about is an exorcism. And the answer is no. Matter of fact, I'm going to say, hell no. I would not watch an exorcism. And the reason that I wouldn't is because obviously you have to know what you're doing, even watching it. And I don't. I'm not a pastor. So I would not be involved in an exorcism, a seance, or anything. Ouija boards, you'll never catch me playing with Ouija boards. I don't involve myself in anything that has to do with casting out demons, calling upon demons. Some of you guys ask me how you channel demons. I don't know, because I don't do those kind of things. So I tell you guys all the time, I've said it probably 50 times. Sometimes you channel things into your life and they never go away. So do not, I repeat, do not ask for these things to come into your life. So this blog, I also things come into your life that are demonic, okay, or perceived as demonic, okay. So then you guys start asking me questions about these blogs, which I welcome, okay. So one of the first questions is from blog 18, twin flames. Everybody had questions about twin flames, and I understand why, because it was so profound and unbelievable. So this question is, did you ever question if the demonic portal in the basement, or belief there was one in the basement? What I think they were trying to say is, did the kids mimic the father? If the father believed that there was a demonic portal in the basement, did I ever question whether or not there was one, because the kids may have been mimicking the dad, and kids are impressionable. And that's absolutely true. And I mentioned before, that was also a hypothesis of mine, that these kids were mimicking their dad. So if you don't know what we're talking about, go back to blog 18 and read about twin flames. The problem was I could not separate, I didn't have enough time to figure out if the kids were mimicking their dad. But I did know that these kids could actually see ghosts, and I explained why in the blog and also on the podcast for blog 19. So that was always a hypothesis of mine, and you actually do have to think about that. So I'll give you an example. Cult behavior. Cult behavior is a popular one. So when you pull people away from the cult leader who is projecting all of their beliefs onto people. Think about Charles Manson and his followers, okay? When you pull people away from that type of mental health impairment, they should go back to baseline, or what people call normal, okay? So I had been waiting on that to happen to these two kids, but I didn't work with them long enough to know if it truly was them mimicking their dad. But I will say again that they did say a lot of the same things that other children have said about the buildings that I worked within at that time and about me. The second question, have you ever met with adults with proven abilities, meaning abilities to see ghosts, and connectivity to spirits to potentially further affirm what the children are experiencing? Yes. Yes. I think in the last 2 weeks, I've talked to you guys about parents a bit more, and that how parents would actually confirm a lot of the different abilities that the kids would tell me. And I've met quite a few, I actually just met um, some adults who could actually see ghosts, and these same adults, without me telling them or alluding to that I even work with kids like this, actually told me what was around me, which I mentioned to you guys. That was one way that I can confirm that, these kids were truthful, remember, because they will all see the same different things. I'll give an example. All the parents that could see ghosts, they saw the little spirit boy in the building, every last one of them. So yes, they would confirm those. And also remember, like for example, the little spirit boy supposedly was tied to that movie, The Exorcist. And remember, I told you that some of the staff actually knew that there were some hauntings in the buildings, and so I would actually go back, ask them, and then confirm through my own research, meaning different archives, historical archives and stuff like that, as to whether or not this stuff was true. So, yes, I did further affirm what these kids were experiencing. A lot of parents also ask me questions, and I wish I can answer all of them, but I try to answer as much as I can, and even privately. So, one parent sent me a message and said, "My child is scared by a demon. What should I do? What should I do?" And somebody actually said that live on the podcast as well. And I want you guys to remember that, this is scary to children. I've said that before and I'll say it again. It's pretty scary to children, and it gets scary to parents. So what I used to always do was to help parents to take control of their child's ability. I broke down the different kinds of parents that I saw, about 2 weeks ago. But one thing they all had in common, which I didn't say, is that they lost, even the parents who could see spirits, lost the ability of how to control their child's ability or to help them control it, and how they can help them. This helps their mental health, decrease their symptoms of mental health. So they all had that in common. So you understand that not only is it scary, but it's really brave for kids to tell us that they have these abilities. And so, what we want to do is to teach them how to control those abilities so that as they go stronger, within themselves and also with this gift, they know how to make them go away. Because to all kids, I haven't found one where this is not true. They are all dark angels to them, and they do not want the majority of them that I've worked with did not want dark angels or demons to stay around them. So they wanted to know, what can I do to protect my child? And so that's a long-winded answer for how I would teach the parents how to control or help their child to control this. And you actually can do that. I know someone right now who, can see ghosts and has always seen ghosts. And it's like, there's one at the window I don't want to see. So I shut the blinds and pray about it and make sure they go away, and it goes away. So I still talk about this stuff to a lot of people. And that's what this person recently told me, or I don't really want to go in my basement. This was another story because there's a man in my basement and it's a ghost and I can see him clearly. I just don't want to deal with it. And I'm like, okay, well, let's go downstairs and deal with it. And we did. So yeah. So that's what we do. We kind of teach the kids. Eventually the parents come around, some of them, and we teach the kids how to control, their gift. Um, this is something that I heard about, this next question, from kids over and over again. And it makes me think that there are probably a lot more kids who can do this, because all of our kids have probably told us that they were either scared of the monsters or they were scared to go to sleep in their rooms at night because of a ghost. A lot of kids say that, but there are some kids who actually really do see ghosts. And so there are a lot of parents who ask me, what can I do at night? Because my child sees ghosts at night. I remember in particular one parent, there was also another one within this year, within the last 3 months, who told me that their kid sees a ghost, a woman at the end of their bed, at the end of the bed, the footboard at night. And it's scary. Another one talked about when their kid is waking up, they see ghosts from sleep. So I have to share with you, it really annoys me, and it always annoyed me when these kids were just bothered like that. They couldn't sleep, they wouldn't go in their closets, they wouldn't go in the basement, they'd be afraid to steal a cookie at night in the kitchen because there would be a ghost sitting or standing in their kitchen. I have a lot of stories about this. And so I was always annoyed. And sometimes the kids would report that these ghosts would follow them to school. And so they would lift their pencils up off the desk and follow them around. And, I've said this before, tell them to be more aggressive, toward other people. And so at some point, I learned the way that you control this gift, because I do think it's a gift. Not everyone can do it. Is that for parents, whether they believe in God or not, that's something that you have to add. You have to add it, and you have to teach your kids how to ask for protection. And when I used to do that, I will always confirm with the kids if things changed. If things changed at school, what do they see at school? If things changed on the bus, if they changed in my office, when they're at home at night, when they open their eyes, what do they see? And the kids would tell me whatever they asked for in prayer, that's would be in the room with them. So I have lots of stories of answering that question and what it means and what it is. Now, some parents will say, does that mean that it's someone that died, who's visiting my kid? I don't know. I don't know. It depends on what your belief is. And again, there are some parents that get super excited, like, oh, that's my good old grandma visiting, watching over my son because he's still little, 6 years old. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Ask your son. And more times than not, these kids would say, no, it's scary. And I would tell them, God's angels are not scary. They won't scare you. Let's see. Are paranormal movies connected to paranormal activity? I can answer this a couple of ways, but the way that I answered it on the blog is the non-professional way. Okay. And that is to say, yes. Listen, I have my beliefs, and that's not going to change. I'm too old to change at this point. I'm just joking. I do believe that people aren't that creative. We just aren't going to think one day, I'm going to make a movie about a little boy who sees ghosts. Or I'm not going to make a movie about The Exorcist, or I'm not going to do this without these individuals having some experience in it. So they may not see ghosts themselves, you know, they may not have all the answers, but they sure do make good movies. And so I do believe that there is a connection to some of these movies with regard to, some things that people have experienced. Yes. They don't just come up with this stuff. Think about some of the movies. The content is great. And so I always look at them and go, somebody had this experience. I always think about Gothica with Halle Berry. Um, that movie was that movie was scary. I've never watched it again. I said that over Halloween. But there were some scenes in Gothica where I was looking at it going, somebody's been in a mental health hospital. Somebody has seen, I'm not going to give the movie away if you haven't seen it. Somebody has seen some of this stuff. This is just not something that one day they were sitting down, or I'm going to write a book about it. It's no different than me. Like literally, all of the experiences that I have could probably be put into a movie, right? And then if they did, it would be based upon my real experiences with kids and parents, because these are actually real. They're not lies at all. I can account for everything that I'm talking about. And there are a lot of other psychologists and other professionals who can attest to some of this stuff as well. And having experienced it, I know someone right now who told me a little boy under her care is telling her that he can see dark angels, quote, and what should be done about it because he doesn't like seeing dark angels. So a lot of, professionals who talk to people experience this stuff. So it ain't just me. Let me see. I want to see ghosts. Why can't I see ghosts like other people? I don't know. I will tell you what kids have told me, because there are a lot of people who want to see ghosts. I don't even know why you guys want to see ghosts, but there are a lot of people who do want to have this same gift. I want you to be happy that you do not have that gift. I know people personal to me who have this gift and they don't like it. So the way kids describe it to me, or have described it in the past to me, is if you are sitting somewhere or you are standing somewhere and you can see the whole paranormal activity that's around you. So things walking, dark angels, other entities, whatever. They said you just can see it all. I'm looking around the room as if I can see and I can't. They said you can see it all. And so some of it is so scary that you should be happy, because it's not necessarily a gift that you want. And that's what they have told me. Okay. Some simpler questions that I thought I would throw in. Can people hear and talk to ghosts? Yes. Are possessions real? Yes. Yes. Sometimes I want to tell people, what do you think is happening around us? All of the things that are happening around us in real time. Yes, possessions are real. I have seen kids that are possessed. I have seen adults that are possessed. I've seen a lot of crap. I'm going to say that nicely. A lot of crap over the years. Yes, they are. Yes, they can be dealt with. No, you don't want to be possessed. Protect yourselves, okay? All right, big question. I answered, honestly, this next question I probably answer every day. And I'm not going to answer it every day anymore. I have to stop. Everybody wants to do this, and they ask me about it. I appreciate the question, but I've answered this a million and gazillion times. This question is, I want to play with a Ouija board and Ouija board. What should I do? How should I do it? Most of you who follow me and who've listened to the podcast already know my answer. No. No. Don't play with a Ouija board. I don't care if people tell you nothing happens. I don't care if people tell you it's just a game. I don't care if people tell you it's not real. It is real. If you ever talk to a kid who can't see ghosts or their parents who can see, they would tell you it's absolutely real and you can't just throw it away. There are so many documents out there about Ouija boards and people that have played with them and what happens as a result of dealing with Ouija boards. And they are not a good idea. These individuals that I worked with will tell you that over and over again. So every time I get a question about who should I call upon on the Ouija board, or should I play with the Ouija board, or how do I get one, or how do I this and how do I that, and what will happen, and how do I know it's real, I always tell you guys, go back to Marilyn Manson's story, since he's a celebrity. Look at all the stories out there about what happened to people who plays with Ouija boards. The answer is a firm no from me. For all the sciences, this question goes out to you. Psychology is actually a science too. So, but this goes out to those who say, prove it to me empirically that ghosts exist. So I always say, the science question. Everybody wants things proven scientifically. I think there's enough evidence that if we wanted to prove this scientifically, we could. I think we could. Do we want to prove it scientifically, or do I do? I'll speak for myself. No, I don't want to do any research, but what I will tell you is all of my documentation is research. And if I put it in the book, do I have evidence to back it up? Nope, but I told a whole lot of people over the past 25 years, and those people can vouch for me that this stuff happened. If you want to prove it scientifically, you can. There are people out there who chase ghosts. There are actual places in America that have known hauntings. So go for it. Let me know what you find. But it's not something that I'm interested in. Another question, I can see ghosts and I feel alone because no one believes me. Oh, I had a typo. I have to fix that. Because no one believes me. What should I do? I'm going to defer you to a therapist. If you need recommendations for a therapist in your area, I can do that. There's no reason to feel alone, and there are people that are trained to support you. Another question is, how do I know the difference between a demon and or a ghost? That's a good question. I'll tell you what the nebulous kids is what I call children that can see ghosts. Kids will say that there are differences because of what they see and how their little brains interpret ghosts. So kids will say a demon is a dark angel, and then you have demons can change into white angels, as they'll say, be careful. And then they'll also say there are God's angels, and then they see stuff walking around. Their parents will say the things that walk around are demons. So when people say, oh, it's my grandmother, adults who can see ghosts will say, no, it's not. Now, those who practice printing your religion will say they're all demons because there is no purgatory period or middle ground. So either you go to heaven or you go to hell. Anything in between is demonic. Most of the kids will agree that I've worked with, and that's who I learned it from, the kids and the parents, that anything that they see just kind of walking around, these kids know if they are biblical or not. These kids know dark versus light. So they would tell you basically that they're all demons. Some of the kids are excited to work with them despite the fact that they're demons. And that's just because some of their little minds just don't know the danger in doing that. And some of them will say, I don't mess with any of them except God's angels. So it just depends. But overall, um, I will interchange the words ghost and spirits and oh gosh, I can't, entities. I will do that just because I get sick of saying ghosts all the time. But the kids will say the big difference is light versus dark. Another big question. Is there a correlation between mental health and paranormal activity? Yes. Yes. This is another question where I have my theories, in particular with schizophrenia, which we do have scientific, for you scientists, evidence that the brain is different in some areas for individuals with schizophrenia. I am no specialist in schizophrenia. Let me give you that disclaimer because I work with kids and I don't have to deal with schizophrenia. However, do I believe that there's a correlation? Sure, I do. Sure, I do. I remember times when I would walk into hospitals when I was much younger, and these were, some mental health hospitals, and I would watch. Oh my God, I have such images when I close my eyes. I would watch people just sitting there, kind of doing different things that would make some who have not had these experiences think, oh, they're just crazy, using the crazy word that all psychologists hate when describing people. Slang is different, but describing people, we hate that word, which is a common layman's term to describe people who are different. And I would walk down the hallway and I would see different things, happening. And when I was really young in psychology, I would always think, what are they looking at? Why is it always a male voice? Why are they pointing to things? Why are they content talking to something that I can't see? As I've grown in psychology, I realize we just don't have the answers to everything. Some of these things, like imagine something talking to you in your ear all the time, it would make you have symptoms of mental health. So you see the correlation? I think there is a correlation, and these kids that I've worked with would have symptoms of mental health. Anxiety was huge because they were afflicted by what they saw all the time. And kids are not idiots. Kids know that there is something different with what they see. So when they see something, they're like, for example, okay, something's by the closet and I can see through it. And we'll say, mom or dad, can you see that? And the mom and dads who can't see are kind of like, what's happening to my kid here, So eventually, these kids start, some of them, following directions from what these ghosts are telling them, or sometimes they will, make such poor decisions that even the schools start questioning their mental health. So yeah, there's a correlation. I can talk about that probably for like the next 3 hours, but I won't bore you and talk that long about it. How can I protect myself from demons? That's another question. Lots of questions come in about demons. And it's okay to talk about demons. Somebody asked me that. Yeah, you talk about them because you call them out. That's okay to do. Um, Listen, just on a sidebar, demons know the Bible better than most of us. Remember, Satan was a fallen angel. So don't forget that. So yeah, call them out. So people ask about demons. Again, it just depends upon what you believe in. I've seen kids in my care learn to pray. They pray at home. They prayed in my office and will tell me, I can clearly remember some of the kids going, when they would see what they prayed for. Most of the time, angels come down in the room And then I remember once, and I may have told this story, so forgive me if I told it already. I remember once Child B's mother came right into the room and stopped, and she said, "Oh my God, you've been praying. It's nothing but angels in here." So I have a lot of experience with that. Are all angels of God? No, no, and no. All of these kids will tell you no, and I will tell you that too. Um, uh, one thing I learned over the years is that when you encounter a kid like this, I've had plenty of kids that I was sitting with, and I'm like, okay, who's in the room? And they're like, oh, it's just a bunch of other little kids around sitting with me listening to you. And I was kind of like, yeah, they need to go away. Or telling the kids answers to some of my tests, these kind of things. And so over time, I learned from a pastor because I had to ask, what do I do to get these things to leave at least my office and go away so that I can work with these kids? And I learned to test angels. When I did that, for example, if all these little, ghosts would be sitting with the kids, if I pulled out a Bible and said something like, those of you that are not of God, those of you that are of God, touch the Bible, and the kids would say, my friends left, they cleared the room. And I would go, oh, well, here we go. They weren't of God, so I'm glad they left. I remember a girl who in St. Louis who told me to it was when I pulled, actually, was this in Chicago? No, this was in St. Louis. When I pulled a Bible out, because she was kind of telling me the same thing, and she was older, she said, ooh, I should write about this. It's a deep story. She said that when I did that, all the angels from outside came and touched the Bible to let me know that it was okay for them to be around us, protecting us. Hold on, I got to write that down real quick because that actually, I should tell you guys all about that. Sometimes when I talk to you all, some of the stories come back, like that one. Now that was in St. Louis, and she was telling me that they were all around, what she saw were dark angels. They were around, they were just, in the room, kind of disguised as kids. And so I told her, I said, okay, well, we got to do something about that because that's not okay with me. And when we did, she said all the angels that were guarding the kids outside came and touched the Bible. And she actually said they were giggling because I was like, well, which ones didn't touch it? She said they're gone, but the other ones are touching the Bible and, wanting you to read from the Bible and stuff like that. And so I said, oh, and they perceive me as being mean toward them. And so one of the angels had told her to tell me to stop being mean to them because they are of God and leave them alone. So I was like, okay, I better leave them alone. I wasn't being mean. I was making sure we were protected, but they told me to stop being mean. What are you going to do? Tell God's angel the answer is no? I wasn't. Another question. I can see ghosts, but people never believe me. Do you believe me? Yeah, I believe you. I sure do. Um, I am one of your nebulous children who's an adult now. How can we get people to understand that these are our experiences? Um, I think it's fear. Fear is irrational to me. Fear is something that we create in our minds and we act on it. And that's how I feel about it. And so when people are fearful of something, they rebel against it. So anything different, including me, people will rebel against it. So you stop trying to make people believe you and be your own truth and believe in yourself. If they can't see it, they don't think it's real. If they can't touch it, they don't think it's real. So people may never believe that you can see ghosts, and that's okay. because I believe you. One of the things that I learned with kids a long time ago is to teach them that you just can't tell everybody you can do it. There are so many people who can't see ghosts themselves that they can't even entertain this kind of stuff. And that's okay. They're entitled to how they feel. You just stop trying to make them believe you. So I'll have another blog where I talk about all kinds of questions again at some point. I would like to answer different kinds of questions. So I'm probably going to pull a few listeners in on my blog in a couple of weeks and have you ask me just live questions about some of these stories, because I want to try to move away from asking about Ouija boards and those kind of things. All right. So we can move on to blog 23. And I really like this blog, but if you take a look at it, it's called Emotions. A lot of people, when I started thinking about this blog, even in person, like some of my colleagues were asking me about some of the emotions that kids would tell me, about how they felt. And so I was trying to think of a movie to give you a visual. If I think of a movie, I'll say it. But there were a lot of other things that I did with these kids. Like there were some kids that went through neuropsych testing and neural imaging tests like MRIs and CAT scans. There were a lot of other things that I have not opened up about. And that over time I will in a blog. But some of these kids felt frustrated, and parents felt frustrated as well. So it was more, it's fun to talk about, but to these kids, it wasn't always a fun thing. It was like nightmares coming true for some of these kids. And so a lot of them had anxiety. Anxiety was huge, obviously. I mean, think about it. If you go look in your closet or you're scared to, but you need to get your clothes out and you're afraid that some ghost is going to be there, of course that would, you know, give you some anxiety too. These kids did not always know how to make ghosts leave them alone. And that was the largest problem, not knowing what to do. Most of these kids, when I say most, I do mean that. Over 95% of the ones that I did work with that had this ability had nothing wrong with their brains. So that means that they really didn't have chemical imbalances. So what was happening was they were reacting based upon their ability. Does that make sense? It's no different than an athlete. Your body reacts upon what you put into your body to perform your chosen career in athletics. Basketball players, NBA players, you hear about how painful, definitely football players, but as far as NBA players go, their bodies ache. You see a lot of them that choose to smoke marijuana. It's because it helps, their body feel better, because their bodies are tormented, with sports and exercise. Even gymnasts, shoot, some people in careers, their bodies feel that way too, because they're already always, physically active. And especially if you work with kids or, firemen, policemen, stuff like that. So they had a range of symptoms like that. So the problem for them was that it wasn't that they could see ghosts, it's just that they never went away. They were tormented, unless I had a kid who was totally into it and very happy. They had a couple of symptoms, so they felt isolated. Look at the picture that I put on the blog. The little boy feels isolated. That's exactly what these kids felt. They felt fearful. They felt helpless. They felt dark. I do not like it when kids tell me they start feeling dark. That is a huge red flag to me, because that makes me start thinking that they're headed toward, depression. And I don't want clinical depression in kids. They were very fearful. One of the things that I don't talk about with them is that they felt trapped. These kids felt trapped in this. A lot of people thought it was so cool that these kids can do this, but these kids didn't always feel that way, and they were extremely lonely. So think about it this way. They would tell their parents, the majority of the parents were very supportive. There were a few who weren't. You don't go to school with your parents, you go to school with other kids. So if these kids would say, "Oh yeah, it's a ghost on the playground," or "There's a ghost over here, I just went down the slide with a ghost," what are other kids going to do? A lot of them don't already know. A lot of them already tease kids. Some of them are bullies. So these little babies, you know, it would be even worse for them. It would be even worse for them. So they went through a whole range of emotions, and every now and then they were happy. So I would see the kids happy when they felt safe. So when they felt encouraged, and when they felt as if that there was somebody to listen to them. It was somebody listen. Somebody actually, I think I put something about vision in the blog because somebody asked me, did they need glasses? No, obviously, some of the kids wore glasses. I wear glasses too, but this is different. This had nothing to do with their actual vision. So their vision was not impaired, which caused them to see ghosts. I mean, I guess that's a good question. So these kids had all kinds of emotions when they came in, and a lot of them were just loners because they were very isolated. Now, on the flip side, there was some kids who were physically aggressive. Child B started getting physically aggressive with other girls. And they were physically aggressive because these ghosts, according to these kids, were telling them to hurt other people. And actually, that made me wonder, how many other people actually have the same type of experiences as these kids. For example, child B, who clearly started getting physically aggressive. It was actually out of control for a minute. Something would say, hit a girl on the bus, child B would do it, or get off the bus, knock some girl down. It told me to do it. Really? It took a lot of work with child B, who I actually adored, to stop that. And it was done, by the way, a disclaimer, without medication. Hello. So there's nothing wrong with medication, but I'm just telling you that this one didn't go on to medication. So the kids that I've talked about thus far in the blog, they all had this range of emotions, So it's either these emotions here that I talk about in this first paragraph, or some of them became actually very aggressive toward other people. Then you had the happy kids over this, because those are the ones who actually would make friends with, with these different entities that they would see. So, yeah, so it's a lot. So we will continue blog 23 next week. I tried to really tap into how these kids felt every day with this ability. So if you have questions, make sure you talk to me about your questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good night.